Most betrayals do not arrive wearing the face of an enemy. They arrive smiling, familiar, trusted, and welcomed into your inner circle. That is the uncomfortable truth Niccolo Machiavelli understood centuries ago, and it remains just as dangerous today. If you have ever wondered why good people are often manipulated, while disciplined people quietly rise, this conversation is for you. Together, you will uncover why becoming ruthless does not necessarily mean becoming cruel, but learning where compassion must end and clear judgment must begin. Before we go further, comment the words "clear eyes" below if you are ready to confront reality without illusions. Then subscribe, like this video, and stay until the very end. Because the final insight reveals the quiet principle that separates those controlled by emotion from those who quietly shape destiny without seeking anyone's approval. Beneath every lasting empire stood someone willing to choose wisdom over comfort. To understand this idea, you must first understand the man behind it. Niccolo Machiavelli lived during the violent political chaos of Renaissance Italy, where alliances shifted overnight, loyalty was bought, and survival demanded clear judgment instead of comforting ideals. After witnessing republics collapse and powerful families destroy one another, he wrote not about the world people wished existed, but about the world as it truly operated. His observations became controversial because they challenged comforting moral narratives and exposed the psychological mechanics of power. Over time, many reduced his work to simple manipulation, ignoring its deeper lesson. Emotional blindness is often more dangerous than calculated strength. Modern psychology quietly supports this insight through research on boundaries, social influence, betrayal, and cognitive bias. In an age obsessed with constant approval and endless validation, Machiavelli's message feels almost forbidden because it demands that you distinguish genuine loyalty from comforting attachment before trust collapses. Before moving deeper, you must abandon comforting illusions. Ruthlessness is rarely loud, violent, or dramatic. More often, it appears as disciplined restraint, emotional clarity, and unwavering judgment. These hidden codes expose the invisible habits separating those controlled by others from those quietly controlling their own destiny, without apology or fear forever. The first hidden code is understanding that affection never replaces accountability. Many people excuse harmful behavior simply because it comes from family, friends, or trusted companions. Machiavelli observed that familiarity often weakens judgment more effectively than deception. When someone repeatedly violates your boundaries, your emotional history encourages forgiveness before evaluation. Modern psychology calls this normalcy bias, the tendency to underestimate recurring threats because they feel familiar. Ruthlessness begins when you judge actions instead of relationships. You stop asking whether someone loves you and start asking whether their behavior consistently protects or damages your future. This shift feels uncomfortable because it challenges years of emotional conditioning. Yet every meaningful achievement demands selective trust. Healthy boundaries are not acts of hostility, but investments in long-term stability. The people who truly value you will respect your standards. Those benefiting from your weakness will resist them. Their reaction reveals everything. The second hidden code is learning that access to your life must always be earned, never assumed. Most people distribute trust before observing character. Believing generosity automatically creates loyalty. Reality often produces the opposite outcome. What arrives freely is frequently valued lightly. Behavioral science demonstrates that commitment grows through consistent investment, not effortless privilege. Machiavelli recognized this pattern centuries before psychologists described reciprocity and social exchange. Someone who repeatedly proves reliability deserves greater access than someone connected only through blood, history, or shared memories. Ruthlessness means creating invisible gates, protecting your attention, emotions, opportunities, and vulnerabilities. Every conversation, favor, and confidence becomes a deliberate choice instead of an automatic habit. This discipline initially feels cold because society praises limitless openness. Yet unrestricted access invites manipulation from people who mistake kindness for permission. Protecting your inner world preserves clarity, confidence, and freedom under relentless pressure every day. The third hidden code demands emotional independence before external influence. Manipulation rarely begins with obvious lies. Instead, it starts when someone learns which emotions consistently override your judgment. Guilt, fear, loneliness, admiration, or obligation become invisible strings directing your choices without your awareness. Machiavelli understood that whoever governs your emotions eventually governs your decisions. Contemporary neuroscience supports this observation because intense emotional states reduce reflective thinking and increase impulsive behavior. Ruthlessness requires noticing emotional triggers before acting upon them. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause long enough for reason to regain authority. This simple habit transforms countless interactions. Suddenly, emotional pressure loses much of its power because your response becomes intentional rather than automatic. People expecting predictable reactions become uncertain. They can no longer guide your behavior through praise, criticism, or disappointment. Freedom begins the moment your internal compass becomes stronger than anyone else's emotional expectations around you. The fourth hidden code teaches that loyalty without discernment becomes self-destruction. Society celebrates unconditional loyalty as the highest virtue, yet history repeatedly demonstrates that blind loyalty often serves ambitious manipulators. Great leaders valued commitment, but they also demanded accountability. Machiavelli argued that rulers survived by rewarding dependable allies while distancing themselves from unreliable companions before disaster arrived. You must adopt the same discipline within your personal life. Loyalty should strengthen mutual growth, not excuse repeated betrayal. Every relationship deserves periodic evaluation based upon present reality rather than nostalgic memories. Psychological research shows people naturally defend previous investments, even when circumstances clearly change. This sunk cost bias traps individuals inside unhealthy friendships, partnerships, and professional environments. Ruthlessness interrupts that cycle. You recognize that ending harmful relationships protects your future more effectively than endlessly repairing what another person repeatedly chooses to break. Discernment preserves strength where sentiment alone cannot. The fifth hidden code reveals that silence often possesses greater strategic value than explanation. Most people desperately seek understanding from those determined never to understand them. They defend decisions, justify boundaries, and explain motives until exhaustion replaces confidence. Machiavelli recognized that excessive explanation transfers power to whoever demands it. Every unnecessary defense invites another challenge. Strategic silence communicates certainty without entering unwinnable emotional negotiations. Modern communication research supports this principle because confident individuals rarely overjustify choices aligned with clear values. Ruthlessness means allowing your actions to speak where endless words accomplish nothing. Some people require explanations only because they hope to negotiate your limits away. Others interpret constant justification as hidden insecurity. When your decisions reflect thoughtful conviction, silence becomes protection instead of avoidance. You conserve emotional energy, maintain authority, and refuse invitations into manipulative debates that exist only to weaken your resolve from within. Now the surface begins to disappear. What follows is not advice, but observation drawn from history, psychology, and relentless human behavior. These forbidden realities expose the patterns operating beneath appearances, where power quietly forms, trust silently erodes, and ordinary emotions become invisible instruments shaping destinies without conscious awareness every single day. The first forbidden reality is that people rarely betray you because they suddenly changed. More often, they simply reveal motivations you refuse to acknowledge. Your expectations created a comforting story, while their actions quietly told another. Machiavelli understood that human nature remains remarkably consistent when ambition, fear, or opportunity collide. Modern psychology reinforces this through confirmation bias, the tendency to notice evidence supporting existing beliefs while ignoring uncomfortable contradictions. You convince yourself someone would never harm you because accepting the opposite threatens your emotional security. Ruthlessness begins when observation becomes stronger than expectation. Instead of believing promises, you measure repeated behavior across time. Patterns possess greater honesty than words. This perspective feels harsh until experience repeatedly confirms it. Every disappointment becomes less shocking because you no longer confuse hope with evidence. You recognize reality before reality forces recognition through painful consequences later anyway. The second forbidden reality is that generosity without discernment frequently creates dependence instead of gratitude. Society celebrates endless giving, yet history repeatedly demonstrates that unearned generosity often weakens respect rather than strengthening affection. Machiavelli recognized that value grows when people contribute, sacrifice, and participate in meaningful exchange. Behavioral economists describe similar dynamics through perceived value and reciprocity. Individuals naturally appreciate what requires effort more than what arrives without cost. Ruthlessness does not reject generosity. Instead, it directs generosity toward people demonstrating responsibility, integrity, and genuine appreciation. Otherwise, kindness slowly transforms into expectation, while expectation eventually becomes entitlement. The tragedy is subtle, because you believe your sacrifices strengthen relationships, even as they quietly erode mutual respect. Strategic generosity encourages growth instead of dependency. It empowers rather than rescues. Those worthy of your support become stronger because of it, while those seeking exploitation gradually lose interest when effortless advantages disappear forever. The third forbidden reality is that respect usually precedes affection, not the reverse. Many people desperately chase approval, believing acceptance naturally produces influence. Machiavelli observed the opposite. Individuals consistently trust leaders who demonstrate conviction before warmth. Contemporary leadership research reaches similar conclusions. Confidence, consistency, and competence establish psychological safety long before emotional closeness develops. Ruthlessness means refusing to sacrifice principles merely to appear agreeable. Every unnecessary compromise weakens your perceived reliability, because others struggle to predict where you truly stand. Ironically, constant accommodation often produces less appreciation, not more. People admire those capable of saying no without hostility and remaining calm beneath disagreement. This does not require arrogance or intimidation. It requires internal stability. Once your values remain steady regardless of external pressure, respect naturally expands. Genuine affection built upon respect endures difficulty, while affection built only upon convenience disappears the moment circumstances change unexpectedly for everyone. The fourth forbidden reality is that emotional reactions often reveal more about your vulnerabilities than another person's intentions. Someone's criticism, indifference, or rejection does not automatically define objective reality. Instead, your strongest reactions frequently expose unresolved fears seeking protection. Machiavelli valued emotional discipline because self-awareness prevented predictable manipulation. Neuroscience supports this principle by demonstrating how perceived threats activate defensive responses before deliberate reasoning fully engages. Ruthlessness requires examining your reaction before judging another person's action. Ask yourself which insecurity became activated and why it still possesses influence. This habit transforms conflict into information rather than immediate confrontation. Instead of surrendering control to wounded pride, you recover clarity before responding. Gradually, emotional resilience replaces impulsive defensiveness. Others lose opportunities to manipulate your identity because they no longer control your emotional rhythm. Mastering yourself becomes more valuable than defeating anyone else in temporary arguments or meaningless competitions. The fifth forbidden reality is that every relationship quietly operates through incentives, whether acknowledged or denied. This observation sounds cynical until examined honestly. People consistently move toward experiences rewarding their values, ambitions, comfort, or security. Machiavelli understood incentives more deeply than sentiment because he observed governments, armies, and families responding to predictable motivations. Modern behavioral science confirms that incentives shape choices more reliably than intentions alone. Ruthlessness means understanding these invisible forces without becoming emotionally imprisoned by them. Instead of asking only whether someone cares about you, ask what consistently motivates their decisions. The answer reveals far more than affectionate language ever could. Recognizing incentives does not eliminate compassion. Rather, it protects compassion from becoming blind. You stop expecting impossible behavior from ordinary human nature. This acceptance creates wiser expectations, stronger boundaries, and more authentic relationships because you finally understand the invisible currents directing visible actions every single day. Knowledge without disciplined application changes nothing. These ruthless protocols transform observation into daily behavior, allowing you to strengthen judgment before circumstances test it. Practice them consistently, not perfectly, because quiet repetition reshapes character more reliably than dramatic inspiration. Master these habits, and power becomes increasingly difficult to steal every day. The first ruthless protocol is delaying every important response until emotion loses momentum. Whenever conflict appears, refuse immediate reactions. Give yourself time to breathe, observe, and question your first impulse. Strong emotions create temporary certainty while reducing accurate judgment. By waiting intentionally, your reasoning returns before decisions become consequences. This habit frustrates manipulators because they expect predictable reactions driven by guilt, anger, excitement, or fear. Delayed responses force others to reveal additional information while protecting your credibility. Keep a notebook nearby and write what happened, what you felt, and what objective evidence actually exists. Review your notes after 24 hours before acting whenever possible. You will notice recurring emotional patterns losing influence. Calm decisions consistently outperform impulsive victories. Over time, people recognize your steadiness and become more careful when approaching you. Your silence becomes strategic, your restraint becomes respected, and your future becomes increasingly self-directed under pressure without unnecessary sacrifice. The second ruthless protocol is conducting regular relationship audits without announcing them. Every few weeks, quietly evaluate the people surrounding you according to consistent behavior instead of affectionate memories. Ask whether each relationship strengthens your discipline, weakens your focus, encourages integrity, or rewards mediocrity. Honest answers often challenge comfortable assumptions. Machiavelli valued observation because patterns reveal character more accurately than promises. Create simple categories, identifying trusted allies, uncertain connections, transactional contacts, and persistent liabilities. These labels remain private, guiding your expectations rather than your public behavior. Avoid dramatic confrontations designed merely to express disappointment. Instead, adjust your availability according to demonstrated reliability. Gradually invest more attention where respect consistently exists, and reduce exposure where manipulation repeatedly appears. This protocol protects emotional energy while preserving dignity. Your circle becomes intentionally smaller, substantially stronger, and far more resilient against betrayal when difficult circumstances inevitably arrive without bitterness or public explanations ever again. The third ruthless protocol is mastering selective disclosure. Never reveal every ambition, fear, plan, or vulnerability simply because someone asks with apparent sincerity. Information possesses strategic value, especially when your future depends upon independent execution. Share enough to build authentic relationships while preserving essential space for private growth. Psychological research shows that premature disclosure can create false feelings of progress, reducing motivation before meaningful results appear. Quiet builders frequently outperform loud dreamers because attention remains focused upon execution instead of validation. Before discussing important goals, ask whether speaking creates measurable benefit or merely temporary emotional satisfaction. If uncertainty remains, choose discretion. This discipline does not encourage paranoia. It encourages intentional communication guided by purpose rather than impulse. People cannot sabotage, discourage, or manipulate opportunities they never fully understand. Protect developing ambitions until reality speaks louder than announcements, allowing success itself to become your strongest explanation before revealing them to anyone. The fourth ruthless protocol is practicing deliberate absence. Constant availability lowers perceived value while encouraging others to assume unlimited access to your attention. You do not strengthen relationships by answering every message immediately or accepting every invitation without reflection. Instead, create intentional periods where your focus belongs entirely to meaningful work, recovery, learning, or quiet thinking. This absence is neither punishment nor manipulation. It simply reminds both yourself and others that your time carries weight. Scarcity naturally increases appreciation because attention becomes recognized as limited rather than endless. During these protected hours, silence notifications, Avoid unnecessary conversations and invest deeply in long-term priorities. Those who genuinely respect you will adapt without resentment. Those demanding constant access often reveal dependence instead of connection. By controlling availability, you regain ownership of your schedule, preserve mental clarity, and communicate self-respect without speaking a single unnecessary word, every single deliberate day moving forward always. The fifth ruthless protocol is ending negotiations with your own excuses. Every postponed boundary, delayed decision, or tolerated disrespect usually begins with an internal justification protecting temporary comfort. Machiavelli understood that self-deception weakens leadership before external opposition ever appears. Stand before a mirror each evening and identify one excuse repeated throughout the day. Replace it with one concrete commitment completed before sleeping or scheduled for tomorrow morning. This ritual strengthens integrity because your words gradually align with measurable action. Confidence grows through evidence, not encouragement. As these promises accumulate, hesitation loses authority over your choices. Others notice the difference because consistent behavior quietly communicates strength beyond persuasive language. The greatest victory is rarely defeating another person. It is eliminating the comfortable stories, preventing decisive action. Once excuses disappear, disciplined freedom expands into every important area of your life. Every fulfilled promise reinforces self-trust while quietly dissolving fear of change. Ruthlessness is not about becoming heartless. It is about seeing reality without comforting illusions. Machiavelli reminds you that power begins with self-mastery, disciplined judgment, and the courage to protect your future even when emotions demand otherwise. Every lesson you discovered today points toward one truth. The greatest battles are fought within. Master your reactions, guard your boundaries, reward loyalty wisely, and never confuse affection with trust. The moment you stop surrendering your judgment to comfort, you become far more difficult to manipulate. If this video challenged your perspective, subscribe to Hidden Oasis and join a community dedicated to timeless wisdom, psychological mastery, and fearless self-development. Like the video, share it with someone ready to think differently, and comment, "Clear eyes," if you choose clarity over comfort. Until next time, remember that the quietest mind often shapes the strongest destiny, unseen by the crowd until history finally proves it was right.